Hi guys, today topic is authentication and authorization. Definition of authentication. Authentication is the process of verifying the identity of an individual or entity to ensure that they are who they claim to be. It's a fundamental aspect of security system and it's used to grant or deny access, resources, systems or information based on verified identity. Authentication typically involves the presentation of credentials which can be in form of something the user knows, example passwords, pins, etc. Something the user possesses, example smart cards, security tokens, or something inherent to the user, example biometric traits like fingerprint or facial recognition. The primary goal of authentication or verification of identity. Authentication ensures that the claimed identity of an individual or entity is legitimate of validating the provided credentials or characteristics. Access control. Once the identity is verified, authentication allows authorized individuals to gain access to specific resources, system, or information based on their granted permissions. Security. Authentication helps protect sensitive information and system from unauthorized access and misuse, maintaining the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of resources. Authentication takes place in various environments and systems, including user authentication. In this context, authentication is commonly used during login processes to verify the identity of a user attempting to access a system, application, or website. Network authentication. Network authentication is employed to ensure that devices or users connecting to network are authenticated before being granted access. Application authentication. Applications may require authentication to verify the identity of other applications or services before granting them access to APIs or resources. System authentication. System authentication is used to verify the identity of processes, services, or devices within an operating system or infrastructure. Authentication methods can vary, ranging from simple username password combinations to more advanced techniques. 2FA, two-factor authentication. MFA, multi-factor authentication. Public key cryptography and biometric authentication. Effective authentication mechanics play a crucial role in ensuring the security and integrity of systems and information, preventing unauthorized access and protecting user privacy. Example: username and password, biometric authentication, and one-time pass, OTP, etc. Definition of authorization. Authorization is the process of granting or denying access rights and permissions to authenticated users or entities based on their verified identity and predefined privileges. It determines what actions or operations a user or entity is allowed to perform on a system, application, or resource. Authorization is typically implemented after authentication, where the user's identity has been verified. Once a user is authenticated, the authorization process evaluates their permissions and grants them appropriate access rights based on predefined rules policies. These permissions can include read, write, execute, modify, or delete operations on specific resources or functionalities. Key concepts in authorization. Access control. Authorization enforces access control by defining and enforcing rules that determine who can access what resources and what actions they can perform. It ensures that users or entities have the necessary privileges to perform specific operations. Permissions and privileges. Permission or privileges define the same specific actions or operations that a user is allowed to perform. These permissions can be assigned at various levels, such as user, group, or role based permissions. RBAC Role Based Access Control. Role based access control is a common authentication authorization model that assigns permissions based on predefined roles. Users are assigned roles, and roles are associated with the specific permissions. This simplifies administration and ensures consistent access control across the system. Access policies. Access policies are sets of rules or conditions that govern authorization decisions. These policies define criteria for granting or denying access based on factors such as user roles, resource ownership, time of access, or context of the request. Authorization process. Authentication. Users or entities are first authenticated to verify their identity. Authorization request. Once authenticated, the user or entity make a request to access a specific resource or perform an operation. Evaluation of permissions. The system evaluates the request against the predefined permissions and access policies to determine if the user or entity has the necessary privileges. Access granted or denied based on the evaluation. The system grants access if the user or entity has has the required permissions. Otherwise, access is denied and an appropriate error or denial message is returned. Authorization ensures that users only have access to the resources and functionalities that are necessary for their roles or responsibilities. It plays a crucial role in maintaining data security, privacy, and preventing unauthorized access or misuse of sensitive information. Note: Authentication and authorization are closely related but distinct processes. Authentication verifies the identity of a user, while authorization determines what actions or operations the authenticated user is allowed to perform. Example: file system permissions, RBAC, role-based access control, API access control, and database access control, etc. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.